Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Earth Defense Ship Valor. Through the big screen in front of him, he could see the enemy ships coming closer. The alien ships looked dangerous and moved in perfect lines toward the human colonies on the nearby planets. The aliens were called Zephyrians. They looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. Their skin was green and scaly, and their eyes were cold and mean. For many years, they had been taking over planets and destroying smaller alien races across the galaxy. Everyone was afraid of them. Admiral Lisa Grant's voice came through the radio from Earth's main command center. "All ships stay in your positions. Do not fight unless they shoot at you first." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was nervous but ready. Commander Ryan Blake sat at the weapons control station. He was Jake's second in command and had been fighting aliens for 10 years. Lieutenant Amy Carter worked at the communications station. She was young but very smart with computers and radios. "Sir, the Zephyrians are not stopping at the warning line," Ryan said, looking at his computer screen. "Their fleet is moving past the neutral zone where they promised not to go." On the planet below them, human families were running to escape ships. Men, women, and children carried whatever they could and hurried to get away from the approaching enemy. The Zephyrians had sent Earth a simple message earlier that day. It said, "Your people will surrender to us or we will kill everyone. Your ships look strong, but we have many more ships than you do." Admiral Grant had replied quickly to their threat. Her message was short and clear. "There is one rule in this galaxy that every alien race learns sooner or later. Don't touch Earth's fleet. We suggest you remember this before you make a mistake you cannot fix." But the Zephyrian commander, Admiral Kazeth, did not care about the human warning. He was sitting on his own ship, looking at reports about Earth's military. His spies had told him that humans only had 300 ships spread across all their territory. His own attack fleet had over 2,000 ships, each one bigger and stronger than anything humans had built. He thought the humans were lying to make themselves sound more dangerous than they really were. Kazeth was a very old Zephyrian who had conquered 15 different alien races. His skin was darker green than most of his people, and he had scars across his face from many battles. He believed that humans were weak because they tried to make peace instead of just taking what they wanted by force. "Admiral," one of his officers said, "the humans are asking us to leave again." Kazeth made a sound like an angry snake. "Let them ask. Soon they will have no ships left to make any requests." Back on the Valor, Jake watched the enemy ships get closer to the evacuation vessels trying to save the colonists. The Zephyrian ships were large and dark, with sharp points like the teeth of some giant monster. Their weapons were already charging up, getting ready to fire. "Captain," Amy said from her station, "I'm getting emergency signals from the evacuation ships. They're asking for protection." Jake's hands tightened into fists. He wanted to order his ships to attack right away, but he had to wait for orders from Admiral Grant. Earth's military had very strict rules about when they could start fighting. The first Zephyrian ships opened fire on the helpless evacuation vessels. Bright beams of energy struck the civilian ships, causing explosions and fires. Jake could see on his screen that some of the escape ships were badly damaged and falling toward the planet. "Sir," Ryan shouted, "they're firing on civilians." That was when Admiral Grant's voice came through the radio again, but this time it sounded different. There was something in her voice that made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing and listen carefully. "All Earth ships," she said. "Code Black is now in effect. Show them why the rule exists." Jake had been a ship captain for 12 years, but he had never heard Code Black before. He knew what it meant, though. Every officer in Earth's fleet knew about Code Black, even though it had never been used. It meant that Earth was going to show their true power. Jake's hands moved across his control panel, typing in special codes that he had memorized but never thought he would use. These were authorization codes that only ship captains knew, and they had never been used in living memory. "Amy," Jake said, "send out the ghost protocols." Amy's fingers flew across her keyboard. The ghost protocols were secret signals that would wake up ships that had been sleeping and hiding throughout the galaxy. These were ships that other aliens didn't know existed. On his screen, Jake could see the 300 Earth ships that were visible to the Zephyrians. But now, his computers were starting to show him something else. Little lights were appearing on his display, showing ships that were waking up from hiding places all across the galaxy. "Captain," Ryan said, his voice full of surprise, "my screen is showing thousands of new ships. Where are they all coming from? Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that was about to be revealed. They've been there all along, Ryan. We just couldn't see them until now. Admiral Kazeth was watching his own screens when something impossible started to happen. His computers, which had shown only 300 human ships just minutes before, were now detecting more and more vessels. First it was 400, then 800, then 2,000. What is happening? Kazeth demanded. Where are these ships coming from? His tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian named Vex, was staring at his screen in confusion. Sir, our sensors are detecting ships appearing everywhere. In asteroid fields, near gas giant planets, inside nebula clouds. It's like they were invisible before. Kazeth felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest. For the first time, he began to feel afraid. On the Valor, Jake received a message from Admiral Grant that was being sent to every human ship in the galaxy at the same time. This is Admiral Grant to all vessels. The Zephyrians have made their choice. They decided to touch Earth's fleet. Now they will learn what happens when someone breaks the rule. The Zephyrians did not understand something very important about Earth's fleet. The 300 ships they could see were only the diplomatic ships. These were the vessels that humanity showed to other aliens to make them think Earth's military was small and manageable. But the truth was much more frightening. Captain Jake Morrison typed more authorization codes into his command panel. These were codes that had been created 50 years ago but never used until this moment. Each code would wake up ships that had been sleeping in secret hiding places across the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Carter watched her communication screens light up with incoming signals. Green dots appeared on her display as hidden ships responded to the wake-up codes. Sir, I'm getting response signals from everywhere. Ships are answering from places I didn't even know we had ships, all across the galaxy, in the dark shadows of asteroid fields, hidden inside the rings of giant planets, buried deep in the colorful clouds of nebulae. Earth's real fleet began to wake up. These ships had been waiting in silent sleep for decades, their crews in suspended animation, their engines cold and quiet. The real Earth Defense Force had been hidden in plain sight all this time. Ships that looked like mining operations were actually destroyers. Stations that claimed to be doing scientific research were really military bases. Cargo ships that appeared to carry trade goods were actually filled with weapons and soldiers. Commander Ryan Blake stared at his tactical display as it changed from showing 300 friendly ships to showing over 50,000. His face went white with shock. Captain, I've been serving in Earth's fleet for 15 years and I had no idea we had this many ships. That was exactly the point, Jake replied. His voice was calm, but inside he felt amazed too. Even ship captains like him didn't know the full size of Earth's hidden fleet. Every human settlement, every trade route, every research mission that seemed innocent, they all had weapons hidden underneath. Admiral Grant's voice reached every Earth ship at the same time through quantum communication devices that allowed instant contact across any distance. This is Admiral Grant to all vessels of the true fleet. The Zephyrians have chosen to attack our civilians. Operation Thunder is now active. Show them what happens when someone touches Earth's fleet. Far away, near the Zephyrian home system, Captain Sarah Lewis commanded what appeared to be a simple cargo ship called the Prosperity. She had been pretending to transport supplies between planets for 3 years. But when she received Admiral Grant's signal, she smiled and pressed a button on her control panel. The false hull panels on her ship fell away like pieces of old skin. Underneath were heavy bombardment cannons, missile launchers, and shield generators. The Prosperity was not a cargo hauler at all. It was a battleship disguised as a merchant vessel. All across the galaxy, similar transformations were happening. Humanity's merchant fleet was not just for business. It was the largest distributed military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every human trader, every research scientist, every diplomat was also a soldier waiting for the right moment. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kazeth watched in growing horror as his sensors detected more and more human ships appearing from nowhere. The human fleet did not number in the hundreds like his spies had reported. It numbered in the tens of thousands, and more ships kept appearing every minute. How is this possible? Kazeth hissed to his tactical officer. Our intelligence report said they only had a few hundred ships. Vex, his tactical officer, was frantically checking his instruments. Sir, the ships are decloaking everywhere. Our sensors show they were there all along, but somehow invisible to our detection systems. What Kazeth didn't know was that humans had spent decades developing stealth technology that could hide their ships from any alien sensors. Every race in the galaxy had shared their detection methods with others through trade and diplomacy. But the humans had been secretly studying everyone else's technology and finding ways to hide from it. Captain Ben Carter commanded a stealth destroyer called the Shadow. His ship had been lurking in dark space around Zephyrian territory for 2 years, completely undetectable. Now he received orders to decloak and attack. All Shadow Fleet units, Ben transmitted to dozens of other hidden ships. Weapons are free to fire. Target their command ships first. The Zephyrians quickly discovered that humanity had not just hidden the size of their fleet, they had also hidden the true power of their technology. The weapons that came out of Earth ships were not the standard plasma cannons and missile systems that other races used. These were devices born from humanity's darker imagination and scientific creativity. There were reality-warping torpedoes that could bend space and time around enemy ships, crushing them like tin cans. There were gravity hammers that created miniature black holes to destroy targets. There were nanite clouds, tiny robots so small you couldn't see them, that could take over enemy ships and turn them into allies within minutes. Captain Morrison watched as his ship's true weapon systems came online. The Valor was not just a diplomatic vessel. Hidden beneath its peaceful exterior were experimental weapons that could destroy entire fleets. "Ryan," Jake said to his weapons officer, "activate the temporal displacement cannons." Temporal displacement cannons? Ryan had never heard of such weapons. They fire bursts of accelerated time, Jake explained. Whatever they hit ages rapidly until it turns to dust. The Zephyrian ships and shields can't defend against weapons that make them old. Admiral Kazeth realized that his formation of ships was falling apart as human vessels materialized from hyperspace, jumps that positioned them right inside his fleet. Ships that had seemed to appear from empty space were now surrounding his vessels. "Impossible," Kazeth shouted. "No species has this level of coordination and planning." What Kazeth could not understand was that every human ship was connected through quantum entanglement communicators. This allowed them to coordinate instantly across distances of millions of light years. Captain Morrison could talk to a mining ship in a distant galaxy as easily as he could talk to his own bridge crew. On a research vessel called the Discovery, Commander Diane Walsh had been pretending to study Zephyrian culture for 3 years. She had been embedded within their space, watching their ships, learning their tactics, and cataloging their weaknesses. Now her data was being transmitted to targeting computers on thousands of human ships. "Their shields are calibrated to defend against standard galactic weapons," Walsh reported to the fleet. "I recommend switching to temporal displacement cannons and quantum disruptors. Their hull materials cannot adapt to weapons that attack the fundamental structure of matter itself." Jake smiled as he watched enemy ships begin to crumble and age rapidly under fire from his temporal cannons. "Mr. Blake, open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship." "Channel open, sir." "Admiral Kazeth." Jake's voice cut through the chaos and explosions around the alien command ship. "Surrender now, and your surviving crews will be allowed to return home. Continue fighting, and learn why every intelligent species in the galaxy knows the rule about not touching Earth's fleet." The battle that followed would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the shortest and most complete military defeat in recorded history. The Zephyrians had prepared to fight against 300 human ships. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated attack from over 50,000 vessels that had appeared from every direction at once. Admiral Kazeth stood on his command bridge, watching his fleet being destroyed with terrifying speed. Ships that had taken years to build were being reduced to space dust in seconds. The humans were not just winning. They were demonstrating a level of military preparation that seemed impossible. Captain Ben Carter commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow, which had been hiding in the darkness between stars for months. His ship was one of thousands that had been lurking around Zephyrian territory, completely undetected by their sensors. "All Shadow Fleet units, weapons free," Ben transmitted to the other hidden ships. "Focus fire on their command vessels first. We want their leaders to see what's happening before they die." The Zephyrians discovered that humanity had not just hidden their numbers. They had also kept secret the true nature of their weapons technology. The devices emerging from human ships were unlike anything seen in galactic warfare before. Jake Morrison watched from the Valor as his fleet's experimental weapons systems engaged the enemy. Reality-warping torpedoes struck Zephyrian ships and caused space itself to fold around them, crushing the vessels into impossibly small points. Gravity hammers created artificial black holes that sucked entire enemy formations into nothingness. But the most frightening weapons were the nanite clouds. These were swarms of microscopic robots that could not be seen by the naked eye. When they reached enemy ships, they began converting the alien vessels from the inside out, turning Zephyrian technology against itself. "Captain," Ryan Blake reported from his weapon station, "the nanites have successfully infected 12 enemy ships. They're now under our control and turning their guns on their former allies." Admiral Kazeth watched in horror as his own ships began firing on each other. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded. His tactical officer Vex was frantically trying to understand the sensor readings. "Sir, our ships are being invaded by something too small for our sensors to detect properly. Whatever it is, it's taking control of our computer systems." What Kazeth could not comprehend was that every human ship was connected through quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across any distance. When Captain Morrison gave an order, it reached ships on the other side of the galaxy faster than light itself could travel. The battle coordination was perfect because it had been planned for decades. Every possible Zephyrian tactic had been studied and countered. Every weakness in their technology had been catalogued and exploited. Commander Diane Walsh aboard the research vessel Discovery had spent 3 years living among the Zephyrians while pretending to study their art and culture. In reality, she had been gathering intelligence on their military capabilities, ship designs, and tactical preferences. "Attention all fleet commanders," Walsh transmitted. "Zephyrian shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern that changes every 30 seconds. I'm sending you the algorithm they use. Time your shots for the moment when their shields are switching frequencies." This information allowed human weapons to strike through Zephyrian defenses at exactly the right moment. When their shields were momentarily vulnerable, ships that had seemed invulnerable suddenly began exploding under perfectly timed attacks. Captain Tony Martinez commanded what appeared to be an archaeological expedition ship called the Explorer. For 2 years he had been studying ancient ruins in Zephyrian space, while actually mapping their military installations and defense networks. "Fleet Command," Tony transmitted, "I have complete schematics of their home system defenses, sending targeting data for their orbital weapons platforms and shield generators." Within minutes, human ships throughout Zephyrian space were striking targets with surgical precision. Defense stations that had protected alien worlds for centuries were destroyed before they could even return fire. The speed of the human assault was overwhelming. Zephyrian ships found themselves surrounded by enemies that had somehow appeared inside their formations. Human vessels materialized from hyperspace jumps calculated to position them in the perfect spots for maximum damage. "How are they doing this?" Kazeth screamed at his navigation officer. "How are they appearing exactly where they want to be?" The answer was that humanity had been secretly mapping hyperspace routes throughout Zephyrian territory for decades. Every merchant ship that had traveled through their space, every research vessel that had requested permission to study their stars, had actually been gathering navigation data and creating detailed maps of safe jump points. Captain Sarah Lewis, whose cargo ship Prosperity had revealed itself to be a heavily armed battleship, was now using those maps to devastating effect. She could jump her ship directly behind enemy vessels, fire her weapons, and jump away before they could respond. "Target acquired," Sarah announced as another Zephyrian cruiser appeared on her screen, firing quantum disruptors. The enemy ship aged rapidly and crumbled into metallic dust as Sarah's temporal weapon struck it. Then she vanished back into hyperspace, already moving toward her next target. 10 minutes after the battle began, half of the Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships found themselves completely surrounded by human vessels that seemed to appear from empty space whenever they were needed. The Zephyrians had believed they understood warfare. They had conquered 15 different alien races using superior numbers and overwhelming firepower. But the humans fought differently. They used deception, preparation, and coordination on a scale that seemed impossible. Admiral Kazeth's flagship was now surrounded by a dozen human ships that could have destroyed him at any moment, but were holding their fire. He realized that they were keeping him alive on purpose, forcing him to watch his fleet being systematically dismantled. "Admiral Kazeth," Captain Morrison's voice came through the alien communication system. This is your final opportunity to surrender. Order your remaining ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be escorted out of human space. Kazeth looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. His communications officer was receiving surrender transmissions from dozens of his ship captains. His weapons officer reported that their guns were useless against human technology. His navigation officer told him that human ships were blocking every escape route. How long? Kazeth transmitted back to the human fleet. How long have you been planning this? Morrison's reply came not just from his ship, but from human vessels throughout Zephyrian space. Ships that had been posing as traders, diplomats, and researchers for years. Since your species first achieved spaceflight, Admiral, did you really think Earth survived this long by being unprepared? The truth was beginning to dawn on Kazeth. The humans had not just built a large military. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon designed to defend itself against any threat. Every human in space served dual purposes as both civilian and soldier, ready to reveal their true nature when needed. Admiral Kazeth sat in his command chair, surrounded by human ships that could destroy him at any moment. His mighty fleet was gone, reduced to burning wreckage floating in space. For the first time in his long military career, he felt completely defeated and confused. How long? He transmitted to the human vessels around him. How long have you been watching my people? Captain Jake Morrison's reply came not from just one ship, but from human vessels throughout Zephyrian space. Ships that had been disguised as innocent traders, scientific researchers, and refugees for years were now revealing their true purpose. Since your species first learned to travel between stars, Morrison answered. Did you think Earth survived in this dangerous galaxy by being careless and unprepared? The terrible truth began to dawn on Admiral Kazeth as he processed the information his sensors were giving him. Humanity had not simply built a large military fleet. They had embedded themselves into the very fabric of galactic civilization itself, hiding in plain sight while gathering intelligence on every potential threat. Lieutenant Colonel Helen Brooks commanded what appeared to be a medical ship called the Mercy. For 4 years, she had been providing humanitarian aid to war refugees throughout Zephyrian space, treating the wounded and caring for displaced families. Everyone had seen her as a kind doctor helping those in need. Admiral, Helen's voice came through the communication system. Every time your fleets fought against other species, we were there watching. Every battle tactic you used, every weapon system you deployed, every command decision you made. We recorded and studied it all. Kazeth realized with growing horror that the humans had been present at every major Zephyrian military operation for decades. They had posed as neutral medical personnel, refugee aid workers, and diplomatic observers, while secretly gathering intelligence on Zephyrian military capabilities. Captain Tony Martinez had spent 2 years operating an archaeological dig on an ancient world in the heart of Zephyrian space. His team had claimed to be studying the ruins of a long-dead civilization, requesting permission to excavate historical sites and study old artifacts. Your home fleet positions, Admiral, Tony transmitted. Your weapons manufacturing facilities, your secret research bases, your emergency command bunkers. We mapped and cataloged everything. We know your military better than you do. The Zephyrians had thought themselves the most powerful predators in the galaxy, conquering weaker species and expanding their empire through fear and violence. But they had been the prey all along, observed and studied by a species that had turned careful planning and paranoia into an art form. Every human merchant who had traded goods in Zephyrian markets had actually been a naval intelligence officer. Every scientist who had requested permission to study Zephyrian stars and planets had been gathering military intelligence. Every diplomat who had attended Zephyrian cultural events had been assessing their society's strengths and weaknesses. Commander Chris, Lee had operated a cultural exchange program that placed human students in Zephyrian military academies for over 15 years. These young humans had claimed to be interested in learning about Zephyrian history and traditions, while actually studying their military training methods and command structures. Admiral, Chris transmitted from his education vessel. We have agents who graduated from your own military schools. We understand your tactics because we helped train your officers. Some of your most trusted commanders learned their skills from human instructors. Kazeth felt his world collapsing around him. The humans had not just infiltrated Zephyrian space, they had infiltrated Zephyrian society itself. They had been teaching in their schools, trading in their markets, treating their sick, and studying their culture while secretly preparing to destroy them if necessary. Captain Rob Watson commanded what everyone believed was a deep space exploration vessel called the Pioneer. For 15 years he had been studying unusual stellar phenomena near the Zephyrian home system, publishing scientific papers about star formation and cosmic radiation, while actually positioning long-range weapons platforms throughout the region. "We could have ended your empire at any time," Watson transmitted. "We chose to wait and watch, hoping you would be wise enough to leave other species in peace. Unfortunately, you made the mistake of threatening human civilians. The scope of human preparation was staggering. They had not built a military to fight wars. They had built a civilization designed to prevent wars through overwhelming preparedness. Every aspect of human presence in space served dual purposes, combining legitimate civilian activities with military intelligence gathering. Dr. Lisa Park had operated medical clinics on 12 different worlds in Zephyrian space, treating diseases and providing healthcare to alien populations. Her reputation as a skilled doctor had given her access to government officials, military officers, and their families. Through casual medical examinations and friendly conversations, she had gathered detailed intelligence on Zephyrian leadership and their personal weaknesses. "We know which of your admirals have heart conditions," Lisa transmitted to Kazeth. "We know which of your generals are afraid of confined spaces. We know the psychological profiles of every important leader in your military. We could have eliminated your entire command structure through targeted psychological warfare if we had chosen to do so." The humans had demonstrated something that terrified Kazeth more than their advanced weapons or overwhelming numbers. They had shown the patience to plan for decades, the discipline to maintain their disguises for years, and the coordination to execute a galaxy-wide operation simultaneously. Captain Morrison's voice cut through Kazeth's horrified thoughts. "Every species in this galaxy eventually learns the same lesson you're learning now, Admiral. Most are smart enough to test our resolve with a single ship or a minor provocation. You were foolish enough to bring your entire fleet." Admiral Grant's voice reached the Zephyrian flagship directly through communication systems that had been secretly installed by human technicians who had serviced Zephyrian equipment over the years. "The rule exists because we made it exist," Grant explained. "Don't touch Earth's fleet. It's not a request or a suggestion. It's a law of nature that we enforce through preparation and overwhelming response to any violation." Kazeth understood now that the humans had never been the peaceful traders and explorers they pretended to be. They were a warrior species that had learned to hide their true nature behind masks of civilization and diplomacy. They had turned the entire galaxy into their intelligence network, watching and waiting for threats to emerge. "How many species have learned this lesson before us?" Kazeth asked. 17, Morrison replied. "Most were wise enough to back down when they realized what they were facing. 3 chose to fight and were completely destroyed. You are about to become the 4th. The Zephyrian admiral realized that his species had made a fatal error. They had attacked what they thought was a small human colony, defended by a few hundred ships. Instead, they had attacked a carefully prepared trap that had been decades in the making, defended by the most distributed and well-informed military force the galaxy had ever seen. "What happens now?" Kazeth asked, knowing that his empire was doomed. "Now you learn why extinct species don't get to pass warnings to others," Admiral Grant replied. Admiral Kazeth's final transmission to his homeworld was desperate and filled with fear. He tried to warn his people about the terrible mistake they had all made, but it was already too late. Human listening posts that had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for decades intercepted and recorded every word. "High Command." Kazeth's voice crackled across space. "We have made a grave error about the humans. They are not what we believe them to be. Their entire species is a military force. Every human in space is a soldier. Repeat. Their entire species is a military force disguised as civilians." But his warning arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld at the same time as Captain Rob Watson's bombardment fleet. Watson had been studying cosmic phenomena near their star system for 15 years, positioning what appeared to be scientific research stations throughout the region. When Admiral Grant gave the order, those research stations revealed their true nature as massive weapons platforms. The Zephyrian home fleet felt confident in their planetary defenses. They had powerful shield generators protecting their worlds and thousands of ships guarding their system. They believed no enemy could reach them through such strong protection. But they did not know that human research stations had been living among them for over a decade. Captain Sarah Lewis, whose cargo ship had transformed into a battleship, was already inside the Zephyrian home system. She had been delivering supplies to their orbital stations for 3 years, building relationships with their dock workers and maintenance crews, while secretly installing devices that would disable their defenses from within. "Watson," Sarah transmitted to the bombardment fleet, "their planetary shields are offline. Our inside agents have disabled the generators. You have a clear path to all strategic targets." The Zephyrian home fleet tried to respond to the attack, but they discovered that their own officers were abandoning their posts and refusing to follow orders. Commander Chris Lee's psychological warfare program, which had been active for 20 years, was finally showing its effects. Human agents who had posed as teachers, doctors, and cultural experts throughout Zephyrian society had been slowly influencing their thinking. They had introduced ideas about the futility of war, the value of peaceful surrender, and the wisdom of accepting defeat when facing superior forces. Admiral Kazeth was right, Captain Morrison transmitted to the Zephyrian home fleet. "Your species made a choice to attack human civilians. Now you will face the consequences of that choice." The destruction of the Zephyrian Empire took exactly 72 hours from start to finish. It was not accomplished through overwhelming firepower alone, although humanity certainly possessed that capability. Instead, it happened through the systematic collapse of Zephyrian civilization from every angle simultaneously. Their military command structure fell apart as officers, who had been trained by human instructors, began questioning orders and abandoning their duties. Their economic system crashed when human traders revealed themselves as saboteurs and began destroying key financial networks. Their political leadership fled in panic as human diplomats activated sleeper agents who had been placed in government positions decades earlier. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been providing medical care throughout Zephyrian space, used her access to government health records to identify the most important leaders in their society. Special human operatives, who had been living as ordinary citizens for years, moved quickly to capture or eliminate key figures before they could organize effective resistance. "Target the communication hubs first," Admiral Grant ordered from Earth Command. "Cut them off from each other so they cannot coordinate a response." Captain Ben Carter's stealth fleet had been positioning itself around Zephyrian communication satellites for months. When the order came, they destroyed the entire network in minutes, leaving Zephyrian worlds unable to talk to each other or call for help. On the planet where Kazeth had grown up, human agents who had been operating a relief organization for war orphans revealed their true purpose. They had been mapping the locations of military families and government officials while pretending to help displaced children. Now they used that information to systematically eliminate anyone who might organize resistance. The speed and coordination of the human assault was terrifying to witness. Every Zephyrian world, every military base, every government facility was attacked simultaneously by enemies who had been living among them for years. There was no time to mount a defense because the attack came from everywhere at once. Lieutenant Amy Carter, monitoring communications from the Valor, watched as surrender transmissions poured in from across the former Zephyrian Empire. "Captain, we're receiving surrender signals from over 3,000 installations. Their entire civilization is collapsing." Jake Morrison felt no satisfaction in the victory. The destruction of an entire species, even an aggressive one, was not something to celebrate. "Send word to Admiral Grant. Begin the memorial protocols. We need to document everything that happened here and why." The memorial protocols were humanity's way of ensuring that other species would learn from the Zephyrian example. Every detail of the conflict would be recorded and shared throughout the galaxy, showing exactly what happened when someone chose to test Earth's resolve. Within days, the story spread to every inhabited system in known space. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dominated a region of the galaxy for 3 centuries, had been completely destroyed in 3 days. Not a single Zephyrian military installation remained operational. Not a single Zephyrian government official survived in office. Captain Tony Martinez, whose archaeological expedition had been studying ruins for years, sent his final report to galactic news networks. The Zephyrians believed they were predators hunting weaker prey. They discovered too late that they were actually specimens being studied by researchers who had already decided their fate. Other alien species throughout the galaxy received the message clearly. The humans were not the peaceful traders and explorers they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that prepared for war while hoping for peace, and who responded to threats with such overwhelming force that resistance was impossible. The empty space, where the Zephyrian Empire once existed, became known as the Lesson Zone. No species ever tried to establish colonies there, treating it as a memorial to the consequences of aggression against humanity. Admiral Grant's final message to all galactic governments was broadcast on every communication frequency in known space. The rule remains unchanged and will always remain unchanged. Don't touch Earth's fleet. The Zephyrians knew the cost of breaking this rule and paid with extinction. We hope their example will prevent others from making the same mistake. Years later, when young aliens learned about galactic history, they were taught about the Zephyrian Empire as an example of what happened to species who underestimated humanity. The phrase "don't touch Earth's fleet" became more than just a warning. It became a fundamental law that every intelligent species accepted without question. The humans returned to their disguises as peaceful merchants, helpful researchers, and friendly diplomats. But now everyone knew the truth. Behind every human smile was a warrior ready to defend their people. Behind every human research station was a weapons platform waiting for orders. Behind every human trade agreement was a military intelligence operation gathering information about potential threats. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their patience, their planning, and their absolute commitment to protecting their own people no matter what the cost to their enemies.